All right, so let's talk a little bit about HTML and CSS and how we got here from where we began. Um, we're going to explore a little bit of the history of the internet and the World Wide Web. We're going to look at the differences between HTML and XHTML and CSS. And we're going to create a web page. We're just going to use basic HTML tags today. And later we'll learn how to apply formatting to those tags to make the page look differently than just black text on a white background. We're going to look at images and how to put images on our web page. We're going to learn how to create lists. We're going to learn how to create nested lists and validate our web page. That is ultimately where we're going. We're not all going to get that done in one video today. So let's start by talking about the internet and the World Wide Web, because this is a confusing thing to some people. So what is the internet? Okay, so this is this global internetwork. And when I say internetwork, it's networks like the network we have at our school that's connected through another network connection to a network at a college. It's connected to another network, maybe across the pond in Europe somewhere. You know, all these networks are all connected together, and they function as a method of communication worldwide. However, that's not the same as the World Wide Web, because on the internet, we also have email, and email isn't technically part of the World Wide Web. Email has its own protocols and its own methods for transferring email between different email servers around the world. There are file transfer protocols that let us transfer files over the internet. There are all kinds of different ways to communicate on the internet. Okay, the World Wide Web is just one of those technologies. The World Wide Web is the technology that gives us the ability to download web pages. It has its own protocol, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP, and you've probably seen HTTP before. You've seen those letters when you look at the address bar on your web browser. You see HTTP or HTTPS, or Hypertext Transfer Protocol. The World Wide Web is that hypertext, that text we can click on and it takes us somewhere else. That is one small technology of the entire internet. Okay, so know the difference. The World Wide Web is a piece of the internet. It is not the entire internet. The terms are not interchangeable, although we have to understand that a lot of people use them interchangeably. Okay. So the software we use to download and view web pages is our web browser, and you've all used those before, I'm sure, and it has Microsoft Internet Explorer, so that tells you it's a little bit of an old slide, because you know Microsoft has phased out Internet Explorer and now they have Microsoft Edge. Apple's browser is called Safari. Google Chrome is probably the one most of you use, and there's also Mozilla Firefox. Chrome is kind of becoming the standard. Even Microsoft now in its Edge browser is going to start using the Chromium engine just to make things compatible. So what is HTML? HTML is hypertext markup language. It is not so much a programming language, it is a markup language. It's just a set of instructions that identify pieces of a web page and lets us specify things about how they're laid out or how they look. XHTML is extensible hypertext markup language, and you don't hear as much in particular about that today, because we used to treat the two differently, and we'll talk in a minute about HTML5, which kind of took the best of both worlds. So extensible hypertext markup language is a set of rules applied to HTML. See, in the early days, HTML was very forgiving, and you could violate the rules and everything would work well. Well, that's good in some ways, but in other ways it caused a lot of problems. So XHTML kind of codified those rules and said, no, this is the proper way to do it, and we want everybody to do it that way. Okay. So there, for a while, there was HTML and XHTML, and there was different versions of each, and you had to specify that on your web page. But ultimately, as we went through version 1, 2, 3, and 4 of HTML, and in version 4 there was XHTML, and there's lots of different versions, and it got confusing, but they all kind of melded together when we got to HTML5. Okay. Cascading style sheets specifies formatting and placement. But we tend to split out the content, the words and the things, the images, the words, images, paragraphs, headings. We specify those with hypertext markup language, with HTML, and we specify how we're going to format that. The pretty colors and the nice layouts and things like that come from the cascading style sheets. So rendering a web page is the process that your web browser goes through to take the HTML file and the CSS file, decode them, and display the web page to you on the screen. That's called rendering. Okay. The hypertext part is the part that lets us click on a link. Okay. And a markup language is simply a system of code that describes something about that content. So we can take all these words we want to put on the screen, and we can surround them with this markup language to explain to the browser how it should display them. Okay. And all those standards are set by an organization you're going to get very familiar with, the World Wide Web Consortium. Okay. Often abbreviated W3 for W3 is for the World Wide Web, 3 W's, W3C. When we're looking at new features to add to HTML, that's the organization that kind of gets input from all the different people around the world, and so they say, we'd like to see this feature in HTML or that feature, and they take everybody's suggestions and they come up with solutions, and finally they come out with a standard that says, okay, this is what people wanted, this is what we decided would work, and here's how you do it. And they are the final authority on HTML. And we will be using their tools to evaluate our web pages to make sure we're doing them right. So let's talk about some HTML tags. All right. For this, let's switch over. In the next video, we're going to switch over to Notepad++, which you should already have installed. I'm going to stop this video, and we'll start another one with HTML, or with Notepad++, and we'll start creating our own web page in the text editor.